Hey guys, in this video, I'm going to explain to you the things that I found out about vaccinations that were very concerning to me and why I do not vaccinate my children anymore. Now, this is going to be the most controversial video I have ever made, probably, because I know people that are even close to me that will very firmly disagree. I just want to present you with the information that I have that you have probably not heard yourself. And so I hope that you will stick with me and that you will be open to at least listening, because these were things that I wish that I had been told before I put my kids through all of this. Most of this information was from the Candace Owens series, A Shot in the Dark, which is pretty much banned everywhere. This episode will probably be banned as well, so watch it while you can. And then also some of it is from the Children's Health Defense. That's Robert Kennedy's organization. And some of these numbers that I'm going to give you in part 2 of this series is things that you can just Google yourself. Death rate and mortality rate of these illnesses are something very easily just Googled. But take everything with a grain of salt, because I'm trying to put together the truth as well and trying to see things as clearly as possible. And I am absolutely open to the fact that I may have gotten things incorrect. And if I have, please, point it out to me. I'm open to being wrong about things. So first, let me explain my experience with vaccines. It's a pretty universal experience most people have with vaccines. You take your kid to the doctor, they're perfectly healthy, they get these vaccines, and they come home terribly sick. My kids probably got it a little worse than most kids. Usually my oldest got it the very worst. He would come home every night. I would know he's going to have 105-degree fever. He's not going to be sleeping. He's going to seem to be in a lot of pain. And I would usually have to take him to the hospital just because his fever would get so high and we would not be able to break it with any kind of cold bath or anything. And then he did one night have what I believe was a vaccine-induced febrile seizure, and so that was horrifying. Now, of course, I can't prove that, but that is what I believe. And I was told that all of this was perfectly normal, and if this happens to you, you'll also be told that all of that is perfectly normal. And so I just ignored any kind of reason that I had, and I trusted the experts, and I just wish someone had given me this information. And so I'm trying to save somebody some pain that the vaccines kind of caused my family. So we inject 69 vaccines into our children's bodies, and not one of them is tested to see if they cause cancer or infertility. And now if you're a bit older, you might think, well, I was vaccinated when I was young and I was fine. You did not get anywhere near the amount of vaccines that our children get today. The Institute of Medicine concluded in 2013 that long-term safety studies of the cumulative effect of the entire CDC recommended vaccine schedule for children has never been done. They have never done a study to say, hey, what does happen to kids if you give them all these vaccines throughout their lifetime? Is that helping them? Is it making them more sick? And yet they've never done it. It seems like they should have had time to do a thing like that, something that important. HHS has also been breaking the law by not submitting vaccine safety reports to Congress for over 30 years. They're just allowed to get away with that. Mortality from the diseases we vaccinate against were already on the decline by the time the vaccines were created, okay? So this was the main thing I had a question with about vaccines as well. Okay, but it's undeniable that the numbers have gone down, right? And there are two things that contributed to that. First of all, the numbers were already declining by the time the vaccines were created and we started giving it to people. Second is just hand washing, you guys. Did you know that we didn't force people to start washing their hands in hospitals till the 1980s? Till the 80s, you guys? That's crazy. This is recent history. We could have done it earlier. In 1947, they actually realized that this was a problem, but doctors did not want to accept that they were the ones causing these deaths, because it happened where you had a maternity ward, one with, OBGYN kind of thing, and another where it was like a midwife kind of center. And the midwives didn't have to perform any surgeries or autopsies. And so a doctor observed that after his doctors did an autopsy, they would go and deliver a baby and take care of the pregnant woman without washing their hands, and those women were dying in huge numbers. And so he started making people wash their hands, and their mortality rate dropped significantly. Again, this was in 1947, but because the doctors rejected it, it was not something the FDA advocated until the 80s. So that's a big deal. You think it's probably a big deal that they're performing surgeries and then going and touching other people without washing their hands properly? That's a big deal. Here are some not so fun facts from the Children's Health Defense. A DTaP vaccine means a lifetime of greater pertussis susceptibility. The DTaP is supposed to protect your child from pertussis, and it is going to give them a greater susceptibility to pertussis. That's a big deal. Studies funded by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the HHS, indicated that the vaccine adverse event reporting system reflects less than 1% of true vaccine injuries. Okay, so what this is saying is that less than 1% of people who have a vaccine injury are actually reporting it. And I mean, of course that's true. Who is this 1% that like something happens to them and they're calling the manufacturer and they're like, hey, something happened to me, or they're reporting it to this vaccine adverse event reporting system? How many people even know that is a thing? So yeah, I mean, when my child had high fevers or that seizure, I didn't immediately call these people and say, hey, this happened to my child. Can you record it? It's not common. Toxins like aluminum and mercury in vaccines often exceed federal safety guidelines, and those ingredients are linked to childhood health conditions and autoimmune diseases. 54% of our children are now suffering from a chronic health condition, and many of these diseases are linked to vaccinations. You'll be surprised in my second video as we go through some of the health effects that are linked to vaccines, and they're pretty crazy. One is a psychiatric disorder. It just says screaming. Just your child's just screaming. This is crazy. The crazy things that vaccines cause. Several independent peer-reviewed studies have concluded that unvaccinated children are healthier than vaccinated children. CDC owns over 50 vaccine-related patents. What the heck? They own the patents, and then they say it's mandated for your children to get these if you want them to go to public school. That's crazy. That's a big conflict of interest. In the 1970s, 1 in 10,000 children were diagnosed with autism. Today, that number has skyrocketed to 1 in 36. And that has been speculated, this is a speculation, that it has to do with the amount of aluminum that is in these vaccines, okay? Because in the animal trials, only something like 22% of the aluminum was actually excreted through the urine. And in the animal trials, the rest of the aluminum and heavy metals were found in the animals' brains. And yet they said, that's fine and that's safe, because you know who performs these safety studies? It's not the FDA, like it should be. It's the manufacturers themselves, and then they self-report, and we're just supposed to accept that. Did you know that the FDA did not rely on any safety trials before recommending the influenza and COVID shots for pregnant women? They just said, that should be fine. Give it a go. Let's see what happens. And did you know that you also can't sue them if you are injured? They are completely covered here. In 1986, Congress passed the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act in response to mounting pressure from vaccine makers who claim they could not afford to continue compensating for the excessive amount of injuries and deaths caused by these products. So that hasn't been fixed, right? They haven't gone back and gone, oh, you know what? We should fix these problems. So they stopped causing all these injuries and deaths. Instead, they said, well, let's just create a law that protects us, instead of going back and fixing the product or saying, hey, let's scrap it all together. This is what the law says. No vaccine manufacturer shall be liable in a civil action for damages arising from a vaccine-related injury or death associated with the administration of a vaccine. So, those are just some facts to get us started. Tomorrow, I'm going to really get into the bones of why this is so crazy, and it is because nobody is dying from the things we were vaccinating people against. You'll see that tomorrow. I have the receipts I'll show you. I'm just trying to provide you with information. I wish that somebody had told me to help save your family from some pain, and that's the dang truth.